In this screencast, I'm going to look at the master detail application provided by Apple. So iOS application, master detail application, and click next. So first of all, having a look at the main storyboard here. You can get an overview of what the application looks like. The navigation controller encapsulates a master view controller, and the relationship segue here shows this contains the navigation controller contains the table view controller, and the table view controller has a segue into the detail view content. So just to see how that pans out in the application, just press play and give it a minute till it builds and runs the iPhone simulator. So there we have the simulator here, and you click the plus button. It adds entries to the table, which is just a date time, and then you click on an entry, it shows the detail view for that entry, which again is just the date time, and then you've got a back button in the navigation at the top here, back to the master view, and then you can edit and delete, entries. So it's a user content generation. So it starts off empty, and then the user just adds entries, and these open this up. So obviously, as such, it's a data-driven application. It's dealing with storing of user data and looking at that data. So let's just stop the simulator there. So as such, as you see, the navigation controller, if we select it here, and you can see the settings under the class, it's a UI navigation controller, and the master view controller here is provided by the template, and so we can follow that file is this here, master view controller .h. So these are the files generated by the template, and you can have a look at that and you can see how it works. As a data-driven application, it has an array of objects, and then on view did load, it starts to do some customization of the view at that point, putting in the left bar button item. So that was the button at the top left of the navigation bar. It adds it in there, and the add button, that was the plus button on the right hand side, and it adds it in here along with its target action, which is insert new object, which is then implemented further down in this file. Insert new object there, and then navigation item right bar button equals add button. Yeah, so it's defines the button, defines its action, and then adds it to the view. So the code here, insert new object, followed by other code These are the data methods that's going to provide data on demand. The number of sections in the table view is 1, and the number of rows in section, it returns the number of objects that it's displaying in the table view. And then cell for row at index path, it's going to return a cell which is either going to recycle or generate as required, and so that's what this code here does. And various other data methods and delegate methods are provided in the code generated by the template. And prepare for segue is the code that gets run just before the segue starts to show the detail view. So altogether, that's what makes this application work. What we require of the template, however, is not so much a data-driven application as it would be to do prototypes where we have less coding and more intuitive prototyping. So for our purposes, what we can actually do is most of this code for our purposes is actually redundant, and so we can delete this code, which I'll come back to in a minute, and in the table view we can make some changes. And so the content, instead of being dynamic prototypes, which means that the content is dynamic, in other words, it's given by the view controller we've just been looking at. If we put static cells now define cells within Interface Builder here, and so we can change things like the number of rows there, we can add more rows, we can edit each row. In various ways we can customize this visually as far as we require, and we can, for instance, one section, instead of being defined in code, it's just defined within Interface Builder, so that would be how it would look with 2 sections. So the problem at the moment is that the view controller still points at this file with the code that's going to tend to execute on demand. So the only way we can really rectify that is just by deleting all that code, and that can be done quite safely. So all of this customization we can actually delete, and we can actually just scroll down, selecting all of this. For our purposes we can delete it, so, and I think we can go down to about the end there, and that should be okay. It's not showing any errors, so just verify at the moment that run the simulator again, that's worked out okay. So yeah, it's kind of behaving. Having said that, on the detail view as well, that is actually coming from the detail view controller, and so likewise we're going to do our detail views within Interface Builder, and so we could likewise just probably delete most of this as well. So that's really resetting it back to being a more generic UI view controller without any custom code. and allied to that in the storyboard, and that's going into the detail view. This detail view now has the view controller, which is not doing any customization, so we should be okay to run that now. And okay, that does crash it. So what I'll actually do is break segue here, and I'll delete this and go to my objects, and I'll just bring out a clean, fresh view controller, which really is generic, and it's linked to the framework UI view controller, the framework class, without any customization. So it's more generic than before. And if I control and drag out some connections here and then run, and this now works without crashing, so that's a safer approach. So what I'll just do is I'll put something in there just to show that that really is what we're looking at. So we'll put in a couple of objects in there and then run it. Okay, and the table view, none of these items have a linked segue to a detail view, so they're currently inactive. If I look at the two that I did link up, they both work. So I'll just stop the simulator there, and looking again at an overview, it's pretty much what we're looking for is from the template is taking from the template into a situation where the view controllers here are not doing any dynamic data generation, so they're not populating these views with code. It's what you see is what you get now. This is static. This is now static on the table view. Select the table view, and its content is static cells as opposed to dynamic prototypes. So these are the sort of steps you can take to take the template and start to work towards prototypes. So you could customize this to any degree. So just select, type in, okay, and equally you can customize the style of these cells, and you can also adjust the size of them there. So, and likewise these could also link into further view controllers. So if I drag out another view controller, and I'll just put in some different content in there, and so from the third item, I just control drag from the third item to this view controller with a push segue, and run that. So I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to describe here, is that you can use this more in a what you see is what you get style than in a manner of having to write code. And so for purposes of developing prototypes, it's not a bad place to start. So what I'll show in the next video is a similar approach where we'll use our DJCAD template as our jumping off point, and we'll just develop from there similar kind of content, and then that may be the preferred route. You won't even see the code that does the dynamic generation